Welcome to Inside Human Capital, presented by Connex Partners and Sabretooth.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the C-Suite Edge Inside Human Capital. I'm your host, John Light. I'm also the founder and CEO of Sabretooth Recruiting. I've been in the talent acquisition space a long time, and it's unusual for me to find someone else who deals in human capital and bring them on the show who happened to start in the same space I did. Fortunately, we didn't bring our green eye shades with us today, but Monique Jefferson, you're the CPO over at Community Preservation Corporation. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I have been with, we call it Community Preservation Corporation, but we call it CPC for short. I have had the pleasure and the opportunity to be the Chief People Officer at CPC coming up on 4 years now.
4
I have,
years.
yeah, 4 years, and it went by very quickly. But I have told people that I feel like I hit the jackpot in
Yeah.
working where I'm at right now. And the reason why is because I talk a lot about alignment between your purpose, your passion, and your profession.
Mhm.
And CPC is a very mission-driven organization. We are very focused on the impact that we are having on the communities that we serve with respect to affordable housing and making sure that, because my value is that everybody should have a decent place to live, a nice place that's affordable. And as I'm sure I don't have to tell you, there's an affordable housing crisis going on across the country right now, particularly in some of our major cities. And so everybody that works at CPC that is our North Star, is our mission around affordable housing and what are the different creative solutions and ways that we can do that to increase the housing stock and create these affordable housing opportunities for various communities. So I always feel like I hit the jackpot because I'm doing human capital. I'm doing it at a very mission-driven organization, having when I was younger, having lived and done a stint in public housing. And so the mission of the organization is really connected to me. And then I'm passionate. So I feel like I've gotten alignment and I've hit the jackpot in my current role. However, I did not start off my career
Right.
in HR. So going back over 20 years ago, I went to undergrad at Bentley University. Shout out to Bentley.
Okay.
I went to undergrad at Bentley and I majored in accounting. And at the time, it was because in high school, I had an opportunity to take a bookkeeping class, is what I think they called it then, bookkeeping
Mhm.
accounting class.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It clicked. Thought, okay, I can do this. And my parents who, they're funny because they said, listen, it doesn't matter what you do, whatever you decide to do, just make sure that you make enough money to take care of yourself so that you don't have to move back home. So
Priorities. Priorities.
right, right. So I knew that going into accounting, I would be able to, take care of myself financially. So majored in accounting at Bentley. Started off my career at Ernst & Young as a public auditor. And after doing that for 2 years, I realized very quickly that I didn't want to be a CPA. But what I was good at is that I was very self-aware and could very clearly identify what were the aspects of my job that I really enjoyed, that motivated me, that I was passionate about, and what were the things that I didn't like. And after doing that, I literally fell backwards into HR, into human resources. And I was fortunate enough, I got approached about an opportunity at a competitor at the time, which was Coopers & Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers or PwC.
Yeah.
But it was my first HR role. And they specifically said to me, it's okay that you never done HR, you don't have that, experience or expertise. We can teach that to you. The reason why we would like for you to transition into this particular opportunity, it was a junior generalist job, is because you understand the business and you've carried the bag. So I was an auditor, and now I went over to Coopers & Lybrand to be the HR generalist, the junior HR generalist for the first and second year associates that were coming in to the audit practice or the assurance practice.
Let's talk about that for a second, if we can, Monique. Number one, I think I actually still have an audit case here at the house from way back when. So I know exactly what you're talking about, but about carrying the bag. But what's interesting to me, and I think it kind of leads us into a direction I'd really like for us to tackle, and I think it's something that you and I both have a lot of not just concern but passion about too. You had a career pivot. early on. I mean, I started off my professional life as an accountant. I lasted 4 or 5 years. It was public accounting that did me
You
in.
lasted longer than me.
Well, I lasted longer because I went to industry first, but I was allowed to get involved in other aspects of the business, expanding sales centers. I mean, I led projects. I did M&A integration. I rebuilt billing systems. I did all kinds of stuff, not just footing, cross-footing, producing financials.
Right.
I got into audit, kind of did it backwards. And I was bored to death. It just sucked the life out of me for the first 3 months. And at the end of that 3 months, there were 3 months of misery. And we're like, I love you and you love me, but I'm out. And it led me into this space ultimately in a career transition. It was pretty hefty, pretty significant, right? Because I'm not doing accounting anymore, except
Correct.
when I have to for the business. But
Hmm.
you've done something similar and built and carved out this really stellar career path. But I think both of us recognize, because of our experience, the value of your early career development. And with the promulgation and promotion of artificial intelligence, of AI in the marketplace, capital shifting behind the scenes from one industry sector to another, and so on and so forth, it feels like our young people coming out of high school or getting their associate's degree or coming out of college in the undergrad or a master's have fewer opportunities where they can enter into a career path. And whether they finish on that career path or something different, secondary, right? But
Right.
where they can enter in and learn those basic skills that increase their value in the market, where they gain business acumen, learn, judgment. They learn that one of the key things I heard you say is that I understood the business. That's why they gave me the opportunity. I understand what they're going through, but you can't without life experience. Vicarious learning, you need to mate that, if you will, with real life experience. So I'm hoping that we could explore that a little bit today. And Monique, maybe you could share your perspective and your thoughts on how on earth do we help this
Right. No,
generation coming
absolutely.
through? Because that these young people, I always want to call them kids because of my age. I don't know why, but um, when I look at them and I'm like, we have to understand those are our economic drivers going into the future. And we
Hmm.
have to give them something to drive it with. We just can't leave them in the cold as an economy. So, what are your thoughts around all this?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. So the one thing I would like to share and tap into from my own experience is that when I had reached that point, when I was an auditor, when I had reached a point, I said, listen, I'm bored or I'm not happy. I just wasn't passionate and motivated about the work that I was doing. I said, but there are aspects of the job that I liked. And when I sat down and thought about, I was involved in campus recruitment. I would go to the schools and
Hmm.
universities and be involved with the HR team at E&Y to recruit new talent into the organization. So I enjoyed that. I was part of the mentoring program. I was a mentee as part of the mentoring program. So when I thought about what I called extracurriculars, all the other
Hmm.
things that I was doing at the job outside of the nuts and bolts of being an auditor, I realized that it fell under this umbrella called HR. Another way to say that is think about what your transferable skills are. What
Hmm.
are the types of things that you like to do or that you're interested in? Or sometimes people say, I have a side hustle. I'm a photographer, or I love to cook, or I love to do other things, whatever that might be.
As
I
long as
like
it's not
social
audit.
media marketing and branding. I like to build websites, even though that's not your day job, right?
Hmm.
Find out what motivates you, what you're passionate about, what your transferable skills are, and then use that to pivot and try to find those other opportunities that may exist in industries that may be adjacent, if you will, to where you're currently at. I also think that particularly now with early career and younger people, the second thing which is really important is that you have to be flexible and you have to be open to different experiences. They, you never know what's going to come at you. You never know what you're going to be asked to do. You could be asked to do something very low level task, mundane, but you could also be asked to do something very complex and
Hmm.
or it has more risk, right? And in all of those different responsibilities, there's lessons to be learned, skills to be learned, and things that you can take away. So I always tell early career talent, be open Don't just say, oh, I really want to do this, and don't be so fixated in something, particularly very early on in your career. And the sooner that you can figure out what you like, what you don't like, what your strengths are, what motivates you, what you're passionate about, I think in the long run that will definitely help you land to eventually to not only what you enjoy doing, but it's actually in a profession where you can,
Hmm.
make money, sustain yourself, and be happy. Like goes back
Not
to that old
boomerang.
3 Ps. That's right.
Our
Going
parents
back to
want that,
three
right?
Ps.
So let me ask you this, and throw this idea out. When it comes to companies, and I'm not just talking about the big behemoth companies, right? Um, that have tens of thousands of employees, but say we're talking about companies that have 40 or 50. How important is it for them when they hire someone who's early career, even entry level,
Mhm.
to provide developmental opportunities? And let's qualify that. That doesn't mean that you're trusting them with, selecting the strategy for the future of the company. But it means instead of mopping the floors, maybe there's other things they're doing too. Maybe you pull them in so they have a seat close enough to the table to hear the questions on a sales call or in vetting a vendor or, supply chain or whatever it might be to
Mhm.
expand their horizons. But to do that, those people, those early career people, they have to be there in the first place. If you were going back and starting your career, pick whatever generic undergrad, whatever. Don't pick accounting. We already know that, right? You're going to pick something different this time. What would your strategy be?
You're not gonna like my answer, but I've been asked this question before, and it goes back to like regrets. Like I people
Uh-huh.
tell me, "Oh, you seem to love HR. You're good at it. You've been doing it
Mhm.
for so long. Don't you wish you would have majored in like HR management, which is what my graduate degree is in? Don't you wish you would have majored in HR management or IO Psych or something that's related to that for undergrad earlier on?" And my
Uh-huh.
answer is usually no. Because I will tell you that whether it's finance, accounting, whatever that business background and that business degree is, it sets the foundation. Going back to what I said, that I was able to be attracted to a company because I understood the business. I carried the bag, even though I was still junior. I was still pretty junior, but I
Mhm.
understood the business. I carried the bag. I understood the culture of being a public auditor, the late nights.
Mhm.
You're going around to different engagements. That was something else that I really enjoyed about being an auditor. I recognized very early in my career that I like to solve problems. I
Mhm.
like a build. I like to offer solutions. And even though I didn't like doing the T accounts and the reconciliations,
Oh man.
I
T
like the
accounts.
opportunity to meet with the controller, the
Right.
the CFO, the treasurer, and understand, okay, from a financial standpoint, what keeps you up at night? What are your issues? What are your challenges? And then working with part of an engagement team with the
Mhm.
senior and the associate and the manager to come up with solutions to go back and deliver to the client. That's why when I look at HR, I really enjoy being a business partner because that sums up all my experience. You have to know the business to be a very effective business partner, to be a true advisor to your leader. You have to understand the business. You have to be able to collaborate and work in teams. I got that from working on a client engagement. Um, and then the variety and the diversity. So I picked that up and I really enjoyed that as well. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, look, accounting or otherwise, I think those are great. In fact, my advice generally to people going into college is pick the most technically challenging undergrad you can find
mhm.
because it's likely to have the most value in the market. But you and I have both are seeing the shift in real time, the evolution in the marketplace, where there tends to be a movement away from functional specific career paths and into career paths that are more judgment centric, requiring business acumen and experience and that sort of thing. And some of that is just hard to get from a book. Now, you can get most of it, I think, but you need to see the application. It is funny. I had a conversation with someone once about terminating people and how I always didn't struggle with the decision of what needed to be done, but I hated doing it because it requires you really, in a sense, whether it's something that's called for or not, you always feel like you're letting someone down. They're always going to be in a lurch at some point. You know all this, and I hate
Mhm.
doing that. I mean, I do it because I feel like it's the right thing to do in that context, the right decision for the company, the team, whatever. Um, but it's completely different than if you just read it in a book. There are two very
Absolutely.
different experiences. And
The other thing I just wanted to add briefly
yeah.
is, and this is also, I benefited from this earlier on in my career. When I first went into the HR field, I was fortunate enough to have to work for some really strong leaders. And two things that they did was they created an environment and allowed me to make mistakes or take
Hmm.
risks and learn from the mistakes and risks. And the second thing is that I was able to shadow, or I was able to, to watch them. Like sometimes I had a boss that said they were dealing with a very complicated employee relations issue. They said, just come in, sit down, be quiet, just listen. And then
Hmm.
afterwards, when we were done, we say, okay, what did you learn? What were the issues? Do you agree with how I handled it? What
Yep.
did I do? What did I miss? What would you have done differently? And that, honestly, at the end of the day, is the best way to learn. So it's for someone that's just starting out in their career, really trying to find mentors, or sponsors, or just individuals that you can learn from, that you can shadow.
Hmm.
I always tell people to reach out to people. They call it networking, but ask to go to coffee, talk to a number of different people, ask them what they do, ask them, do they like, what do they like about what they do? What don't they like about what they do? Because that will help you kind of figure this out. But then through that, you're also learning. You're also learning about different experiences. You're also observing. So, like, you talk to people, and I always say, when you ask somebody, tell me about the best manager you've worked for, or tell me about a manager that, was terrible. And
Hmm.
they can very quickly tell you, these are the behaviors and these are the things that I observed and I saw and I learned that were either good or bad. And so then when I become a manager, or when I am further along in my career, I learn what to do or what not to do and what's effective. Right. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things where I think because of where work is going, the future of work, I think the broader experience people get, the more they're invited to have, as you were. And I was fortunate early in my career to have someone who invited me into an extremely difficult conversation to listen, to hear the right questions being asked, and to have the conversation afterwards. What are your thoughts on this? And the situation I was hauled into was a difficult one. We had a very high performing employee we found out had been double dipping on unemployment from their prior job while they're
wow.
working for us. And
Hmm.
we had to terminate this person. And it was terrible. And then here's the irony of it all. I got assigned with preliminary interviews on replacement candidates. And I'd never interviewed before in my life as an interviewer.
Hmm.
And at the end of like 4 or 5 in a row, my boss comes in, "Well, what do you think?" And I go, "I'm tired." It's
Yes,
the
you
first
are.
it's the first thing out. He said, "I didn't realize it was as much work," you know?
Yeah.
Um, Let me throw another thought out, especially for people early in career. And, I 10 or 20 years ago, I would have probably said, whatever to this, but life experience has taught me different. My wife, as soon as she graduated high school, went to work in AmeriCorps for a couple of years. And she never made much money, but she did projects. She is from the West Coast and
Hmm.
near Tahoe, Nevada, Reno area. She did projects in DC and New York. She did projects in Alaska. She actually went to Houston and helped with her Tropical Storm Allison recovery back in 2001. I mean, just all over the place, and got this incredibly rich and diverse experience. And some of it was menial, but some of it was just exposure to different people, different ways of doing things. Um, Alaska, Texas, big difference in weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you just go right down the list on those things. And I think sometimes I've met some incredible mature and career candidates who started off in a volunteer organization, and they brought so many great lessons and rich experience forward with them. And I would just encourage people, especially early in career, don't ignore spending a year or two or three not making a whole lot of money,
Right.
gaining immense experience.
Absolutely. That goes back to the point that I was making, that you got to be open. This is what I tell early career, young people. Be open. Don't be so narrow or so fixated that, no, I only want to do this or I have to do this. You got to be open to different experiences, and then also the type of work that you're doing. Yeah, there's going to be some things that are like very administrative or manual, menial. You don't want to do it,
Yeah.
but it's okay if you also get those opportunities to take on more things that are higher value, more complex, have a more element of risk. And the earlier on in your career that you can do that, the better off you'll be. I would also tell particularly people who are in college, juniors, seniors who are about to graduate, and they're looking around at the market like, oh gosh, I'm never going to get a job. You should use the university, your class projects, campus jobs, summer internships. All of those will help elevate you and help expand, increase your skills and expand your experience level, so that when you're coming out, you might be comparing yourself to another person that didn't do a case study or was in a case competition.
Mm-hmm.
All those different experiences, don't underestimate what you're gaining from that, because it will give you an advantage over other students that are competing for these, in the job market, because the types of jobs are becoming, less and less. And not only are they becoming, limited, but then
Mm-hmm.
also the entry point at which people are coming into the organization is changing because
Yes.
of the impact and implication of AI. So what's required is more of those durable skills that we talked about around, collaboration, flexibility, relationship management. So having those different experiences, even while you're still in school or through summer jobs, summer employment, will all position you and give you that advantage where you will be prepared, and you can identify those transferable skills, so that you're coming into the organization at a slightly higher entry point that
Right.
requires more judgment, right?
Yeah.
Things that AI can't take over. Like, oh, I'm sure you've heard the saying before, AI is not going to take your job, but someone that knows how to effectively use it, leverage it, partner with it will, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be both.
Well, the nature of jobs is changing. Not necessarily the employer-employee relationship per se, but away from just pure functional
Mm-hmm.
knowledge based sort of stuff into judgment-centric, business acumen driven. And that's something we all have to lean into. And speaking of which, Monique, if somebody wants to dive a little deeper into this area where we're both passionate, what's the best way for them to find you and get in touch?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I have been very active on LinkedIn recently because I've been doing quite a few posts with respect to AI, not and the impact of AI on early career talent, as well as the impact of AI on leadership pipelines. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Monique Jefferson, our CPO over at Community Preservation Corporation, thanks so much for joining me today.
thank you.
Thank you for listening to Inside Human Capital, presented by Connex Partners and Sabertooth.